In the flickering torchlight of ancient Alexandria, behind the golden doors of the royal palace, lay a chamber that history remembers as the ultimate symbol of seduction. But Cleopatra VII's bedroom was never about pleasure alone. It was a battlefield without swords, a council room without scribes, a temple of forbidden rites, and, when necessary, a place of quiet execution. Rome called her a harlot who conquered men with her body. The truth was far deadlier. She conquered empires with what happened after the lamps were lowered. For over 2,000 years, Roman historians painted Cleopatra as a woman whose thighs opened the way to power. They wanted you to believe Mark Antony and Julius Caesar fell because they couldn't resist her. That version is convenient. It strips a queen of her mind and gives all credit to her skin. But papyrus fragments, Greek court diaries, and the silenced voices of her own palace eunuchs tell a different story. Inside the bedroom, Cleopatra waged the most dangerous kind of war. One fought with whispered treaties, drugged wine, sacred orgasms, and the slow poison of absolute trust. Before I take you deeper into those shadowed nights, let me ask, from which corner of the world are you watching this tonight? Drop your city or country in the comments. I read every one. The first weapon was never her body. It was access. In a world where men decided the fate of nations in smoke-filled halls closed to women, Cleopatra turned her private apartments into the only room where the most powerful men on earth would willingly disarm themselves. Julius Caesar, fresh from conquering Gaul, strode into Alexandria with legions behind him. Within days, he was rowing across the harbor in a tiny boat, disguised, just to reach her bedchamber unnoticed. Why? Because inside those walls, no guards, no senators, no spies could follow. The moment a man crossed her threshold, he entered a space where Cleopatra alone set the rules. Naked, unguarded, often drunk on her private stock of opium-laced wine, Caesar spoke secrets he would never have breathed in the Roman Senate. Battle plans, treasury locations, the names of senators he planned to purge, all spilled in the haze after sex while she lay curled against him, silent, listening, remembering every word. The second weapon was ritualized ecstasy. Cleopatra did not merely sleep with powerful men, she initiated them. Greek visitors wrote with horror of the rites of the twice-born serpent, performed in her inner sanctum. What they dismissed as orgies were carefully staged mysteries, borrowed from the forbidden cults of Dionysus and the older Egyptian mysteries of Osiris. Selected lovers, always men whose fleets or fortune she needed, were led blindfolded through underground passages into a chamber painted black and lit only by a blue flame. There, attended by mute priestesses, they drank chichen, a barley drink laced with ergot, the natural source of LSD. What followed was hours of controlled, tantric intercourse designed not for royal pleasure, but to shatter the ego of the man beneath her. In that state, Roman generals who prided themselves on discipline wept, confessed their deepest fears, and swore eternal loyalty to the woman they now believed was divine. When dawn came and the drug faded, they left forever bound to her by a memory no rational mind could fully trust, yet no soul could forget. The third weapon was the slow leak of chosen secrets. After each night, Cleopatra's personal physician, a Greek eunuch named Olympus, recorded everything overheard in postcoital whispers. Positions of legions, secret marriage alliances, bribes paid to Eastern kings. Nothing was too small. These records were copied onto thin sheets of lead, rolled tight, and hidden inside hollow statues of beads that lined the bedroom corridors. Years later, when Antony needed to blackmail a wavering ally, one of those statues would mysteriously arrive at the man's house. Inside, proof that he had once, in Cleopatra's bed, confessed to treason against Rome while begging the queen to scratch him harder. The fourth weapon was pregnancy as policy. Every child Cleopatra bore was a living treaty. Caesarion was not an accident of passion. He was the ultimate insurance policy. By giving Julius Caesar a son, she forced the most powerful man in Rome to consider Egypt not as foreign territory to be looted, but as the mother of his only male heir. When Caesar was assassinated, the child became her shield against Octavian's propaganda. With Mark Antony, she repeated the game twice. The twins Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, conceived during a single fevered week on her royal barge, were born 9 months later as walking proof that the triumvir of Rome's eastern armies had gone native. Each pregnancy bought her years of protection no army could match. The fifth weapon was the erotic destruction of reputation. When a man left her bed, Cleopatra made sure Rome heard exactly what she wanted them to hear. Courtesans trained in her household were sent to Roman ports with carefully crafted tales. How a certain senator had cried like a child. How another general begged to be whipped. How yet another could only finish if she called him Little Rabbit in Egyptian. These stories spread like wildfire through the empire, humiliating men who might one day march against her. A Roman commander who knows that every legionary is snickering about the time he wore Cleopatra's pearl necklace and nothing else thinks twice before raising his standard against Alexandria. The sixth weapon was bloodbinding, a ritual older than the pyramids and whispered only in the darkest corridors of the Egyptian priesthood. When loyalty needed to be deeper than oaths, Cleopatra took her chosen lover to a hidden chamber beneath the bedroom, accessible through a false panel behind the headboard. There, on a slab of black diorite still stained from centuries of use, she cut her own inner thigh with an obsidian blade and let 3 drops fall into a golden cup of wine. The man was made to drink, then she sliced him never the throat, always the forearm or the base of the thumb so that his blood mingled with hers in the same cup. They drank again, together. The act was sexual, violent, and unbreakable in the Egyptian mind. Mark Antony submitted to it. Twice, Roman historians called it depraved barbarism. Cleopatra called it insurance. From that night forward, any man who had tasted her blood believed betrayal would bring the wrath of Isis herself, madness, impotence, death by serpent. Most believed it. The few who didn't were never seen again. The seventh weapon was the slow poison of the lotus kiss. Cleopatra kept a tiny crystal vial sewn inside the lining of her pillow. It contained an extract of the blue lotus flower, concentrated 100-fold and mixed with dried venom from the horned viper. A single drop on her tongue before she took a lover into her mouth was enough. The man felt nothing but heightened pleasure and orgasm. That seemed to last minutes instead of seconds, followed by the sweetest sleep of his life. For 9 days afterward, he would wake craving her alone, unable to desire another woman. Roman envoys sent to negotiate terms returned to their camps dazed, writing love letters in Egyptian they didn't remember learning. By the time the effect faded, treaties were already signed and fleets dispatched. At least for Roman tribunes were kept on that invisible leash for over a year. The eighth weapon was the mirror game. Hidden behind a false wall of alabaster was a narrow corridor lined with polished bronze mirrors, angles so that Cleopatra could watch and be watched without ever being seen. Trusted eunuchs or her most discreet female attendants stood in that corridor during critical nights. While a Roman general believed himself alone with the queen, every thrust, every whispered confession, every shameful request was witnessed, memorized, and later written down in Greek shorthand. One such record still survives in fragments. A high-ranking Roman quartermaster begging Cleopatra to urinate on his face, while he promised to divert an entire grain fleet from Rome to Alexandria. That papyrus reached Octavian years later after the man had switched sides. He was quietly crucified outside the Circus Maximus, his crime listed only as treason, never the real reason. The ninth weapon was the staged death in 41 BC, when rumors reached Alexandria that Mark Antony planned to abandon her for Octavian's sister. Cleopatra acted first. She had her maids carry her, apparently lifeless, into the bedroom on a golden stretcher, lips blue with berry dye, naked except for the royal diadem. Antony was brought in half drunk and terrified. For 3 hours she lay motionless while priests chanted the rites of passage over her body. Then, at the moment of greatest despair, she opened her eyes, sat up, and took him right there on the funeral bier, slow, deliberate, life-affirming sex surrounded by incense and mourning flowers. Antony emerged the next morning weeping, convinced he had pulled his queen back from the underworld itself. From that night on, he called her my Isis who conquered death, and no offer from Rome could ever pull him away again. The 10th and final weapon was the quiet kill. Not every man who entered the bedroom left alive. When seduction failed and threat was too slow, Cleopatra ended the game herself. A silken cord hidden beneath the pillows, a needle-fine dagger taped beneath the edge of the bed frame, or, most often, the asp kept in a basket of figs beside the bed long before the famous final night. At least 7 bodies were carried out through the secret tunnels before dawn to Ptolemaic cousins, who plotted against her, 1 Seleucid prince who tried to drug her first, 3 Roman spies who asked too many questions about Caesarion, and 1 lover whose name was deliberately erased from every record. Their deaths were always ruled heart failure after excess. Their bodies embalmed and sent home with lavish gifts so no family dared investigate. When Octavian finally marched on Alexandria, he expected to find a decadent whore waiting to be paraded in chains. Instead, he found a queen who had already turned her bedroom into legend, a place no Roman would ever truly conquer. Because every man who had lain there carried a piece of her inside him forever in guilt and terror and helpless desire. Cleopatra did not die begging for life. She died in that same bed, dressed as Isis, to loyal maids at her side, the asp hidden in the fig basket exactly where she had always kept it. The last thing she did was smile because she knew Rome would tell the story wrong. For 2,000 years, and in telling it wrong, they would make her immortal. If you made it this far, you now know why the most dangerous place in the ancient world wasn't a battlefield. It was a bedroom in Alexandria, lit by a single lamp, where a woman turned every weapon men denied her into the slow, exquisite art of survival. Drop a comment if this one hit harder than you expected. Which of the 10 methods shocked you the most? And if you want more uncensored history like this, subscribe and hit the bell. I only release these when I am sure they want to get the channel taken down. Until the next Forbidden Chamber, stay curious, stay dangerous.